Hello, welcome once again to We Would See Jesus. And today we continue our study of the parables of Christ Jesus. And we want to focus today on the parables regarding humility. Now, many people equate humility with weakness. They would define it like sheepishness or passiveness or resignation, and certainly all of those things are weaknesses. But truly, humility is a virtue, truly a virtue. And so, whenever it's found in the Bible would define it more like modesty, humbleness, and specifically submission to God. And those are all virtues. I'm going to read definition. This was given by the Christian author Andrew Murray, and I love this definition. It said, humility is perfect quietness of heart. It is to expect nothing, to wonder at nothing that is done to me, to feel nothing that is done against me. It is to be at rest when nobody praises me, and when I am blamed or despised. It is to have a blessed home in the Lord where I can go in and shut the door and kneel to my Father in secret, and am at peace as in a deep sea of calmness when all around me is trouble. The humble person is not one who thinks meanly of himself. He is simply one that does not think of himself at all. I love that definition. So we're going to examine three parables today regarding humility. The first parable is the parable of the lowest seat. So when Jesus noticed that all who had come to the dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. When you are invited to a wedding feast, don't sit in the seat of honor. What if someone who is more distinguished than you has also been invited? The host will come and say, give this person your seat. Then you will be embarrassed, and you will have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Then when your host sees you, he will come and say, friend, we have a better place for you. Then you will be honored in front of all the other guests. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So when you take the lowest seat, you set yourself up for a promotion, and that's what Jesus is saying, and we all love promotions. Whereas if you take the chief seat, you're kind of setting yourself up for a demotion, and that is a very embarrassing thing. I think we all remember Thanksgiving Day, and certain of us had to sit at the dreaded kids' table, okay? So the grown-ups, they have a solid oak, worthy table, real chairs, everything is perfect. Whereas the kids' table, that we have some wobbly old temporary table, barely even standing up, and everyone that's sitting there has some kind of a makeshift. A couple people might have a little kids' chair that you can't fit your hips in, so you have to kind of sit sideways. You remember those, right? Somebody will be sitting in a beanbag chair, and somebody will have a bucket that's turned upside down, and that's the table. That's the chair that we have to sit in, and you remember that, right? But you also remember the day when Dad said, son, it's time for you to join us at the grown-up table, right? It's like, that is like the best day ever. It's like a day that you'll never forget. It's like I received a promotion, and even like a promotion to president of a company couldn't have felt better than that. It's like that was a great day. That was a great promotion. So the second parable is the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. Two men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer: I thank you, God, that I'm not like other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector over there. I fast twice a week and I give you 1/10 of my income. But the tax collector stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his chest in sorrow, saying, "O God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner." I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And you notice both of those parables have the exact same concluding quote: for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. I'm here to tell you that a holier than thou attitude, and you all know what I'm talking about, that absolutely disgusts God. It gags God. Because we don't have righteousness in and of ourselves. Our righteousness, the only righteousness we have, is from the Spirit of God. And so when we stand up as if we have our own righteousness, God just shakes his head and says, really? Really? You're going to go down this road? And the Pharisees did a lot of things like that. I thank you that I'm not like this sinner over here. I'm much better than that. But they also did other things. And one is that they would give alms to the poor. And whenever they did that, they would sound a trumpet so that everyone took note that they were giving money to the poor. And let me tell you something. Jesus said this. He said, that's their reward. If they do that to be seen of men, then that's their reward. They're seen of men, and the men are going to say, whoa, that's a holy man right there. Maybe pat him on the back. Wow, good job. That's it. That's all you get. But Jesus said, whenever you give alms, whenever you give to another person, don't let anyone know. Then your reward is from your Father which is in heaven. In fact, he said in one place, don't even let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. In other words, do it. Just do good. Don't try to reason it out, and don't let anyone know. So the Pharisees took prayer, which is a good thing, and they kind of reduced it to something that's not so good. And here they gave giving of alms, which is a good thing, and they reduced it to something that was not so good. But they also, whenever they fasted, they would disfigure their faces and they would rustle up their hair. And so people knew that they were fasting. They looked really sad. I mean, they looked so pitiful. Oh. And you know what Jesus said? That's their reward. They're seen of men, and men know that they're fasting. That's what they get. That's their reward. They certainly don't get any reward from God. But he said, whenever you fast, anoint your head with oil. Put on your best clothes. Look happy, because then you're seen of your Father, which is in heaven. And your Father, which sees in secret, will reward you openly. So prayer, giving alms, fasting, these are all good things. But the Pharisees reduced them all to something that was no longer good. It was something to just heap attention on themselves, how good they were, or how great of men of God they were. And this absolutely gags God. He doesn't like this. In fact, of all of the people on the face of the earth when Christ was here, of all the people, he rebuked the Pharisees the strongest. Now, if you think, well, maybe the Pharisees deserve it. Remember that the Pharisees were the religious leaders of the day. They were the ministers. They were the people that people went to say, what's the meaning of life? What do I need to do to be saved? And so he rebuked the religious leaders stronger than he rebuked anyone. I mean, he called the Pharisees hypocrites 6 different times. He called them blind 5 different times. One place he said, you're like the blind leaders of the blind, and you're both going to fall into the ditch. He also called them the children of hell. He called them a brood of vipers. He called them whitewashed tombs. And he said, outside you look great. He said, but inside you're full of dead men's bones. And it's no wonder that the Pharisees sought to kill Christ Jesus, because he was well respected and followed, and he denounced them wholeheartedly at every turn. And I also believe that Christ has some rebukes for the church today and for some ministers today. Not all churches, not all ministers, but I do believe that he has some rebukes for the church and the ministers today. I'm not going to enumerate those today, because there's another parable or session of parables that I'm going to get more specific about that, because he actually goes in and specifically mentions that the churches and ministers have people in them that are not of God. And we're going to talk more about that later. Okay. The next parable is the parable of the 2 debtors. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard that he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of a woman is touching him. I mean, she's a sinner. Then Jesus answered his thoughts. Simon, he said to the Pharisee, I have something to say to you. Go ahead, teacher, Simon replied. Then Jesus told him this story. A man loaned money to 2 people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces to the other. But neither of them could repay him. So he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon answered, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. That's right, Jesus said. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer water to wash the dust from my feet, but she has washed them with her tears, and she has wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven, so she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven only a little shows only a little love. Then Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. And as we know from a previous segment, is that only God can forgive sins. If you steal something from me, I have the ability to forgive you. But if you steal something from my neighbor, I don't have the authority to forgive you for that, because that sin was not against me. But because all sins are against God, only God can forgive all sins. So whether you stole from me or whether you stole from my neighbor, God can forgive you of both of those sins, because they were both also sins against God. So God, through Christ Jesus here, forgave the woman her sins, and she was made whole in every way. I've been asked before, why do you love Jesus so much? And this is the reason why. Because I've been forgiven so much. And I'm not just talking about the sins of my youth before I became a Christian at the age of 17, but also the sins since I've become a Christian. Those are actually even more embarrassing to me. And not like sins that would put me in jail, or not sins of violence or anything like that, but blunders. In chess terms, I'm a chess player, so in chess terms, we would call those blunders. I've committed so many blunders, but yet I always find my way back to Christ Jesus and kneel at his feet and ask his forgiveness. And he is always, always willing to forgive us all sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But be humble about it. You can't be proud and expect forgiveness. And don't make excuses either. Take responsibility for your actions. I'm going to leave you with this quote. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. It's kind of like if you're watching a football team and your favorite team is up against the opposition, which is a tough team. Well, you don't want God to oppose you. You don't want him to be your opposition, because you'll never ever win that. So stay humble, be clothed with humility in all things, knowing that the only good that's in us is from Christ and God's Holy Spirit living in us. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want to say God bless you all. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.